Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for coming on today. I have a really interesting topic here with David. So welcome, David, and nice to have you on.
Thank you, Steve, and hi, and good evening to you as well.
Thank you.
How are you?
So yeah, very well, thank you. Yeah, doing good. Just wrapping up our day here in Europe. So welcome, everyone, and good morning to those in the States. Yeah, great to have you on, David. I think we've got a really interesting topic today. Just maybe if you could introduce yourself and let everyone know kind of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, my name is David Hanna, and I'm a senior advisor at a company called Today, and I've been a consultant for the past decade now. Well, time flies by, when you're having fun, and really started off with a lot of Excel and PowerPoint, but quickly moved into Power BI and Power Query and everything more automated. But also now more into Tableau Editor and Semantic Model Development, and now with Fabric. And really in that sweet spot between the self-service developer world from the business side, but also have a lot of colleagues with hardcore data engineer skills, doing cool stuff with SQL and Python, which you're not able to do. So I'm in the middle. And that's also great for this topic here as well, how it can influence the self-service developers, but also the data engineers or admins as well.
Yeah, awesome. Very fun place, I think, to kind of be in the middle. And I see tools like Fabric. I think it's a really good place, actually. So, you get a lot of those people who come from that more data engineering, and that's a lot of those people that come from kind of that front end, as you say, the Excel, the Power BI. We're getting a lot of people now kind of migrating to. You have to know a bit of both, I think, going forward.
Exactly.
So it's quite interesting. So
Also, the new capabilities as well with Dataflow Gen 2, that is just Power Query online in Fabric, and I can just push it back into even a SQL database if I'm allowed to. But you can do cool stuff as well in Fabric.
Yeah, I definitely think it's I've come from a team who does a lot of data engineering in the background, and I know you said obviously a lot of your colleagues do, so we're exposed to it. But I think for those smaller companies and those who aren't necessarily consultancies, Fabric's really interesting because it's opened a nice kind of pathway into people who wanting to learn more about that and get more into that back end and the data engineering stuff. Often some people in Power BI, they kind of say, I've had enough of the front end and go to the data engineering. A lot of us still stick around and do a lot more Power BI stuff. So it's quite interesting to see, I think, kind of how that's changed a lot of people's paths and what they want to do.
Definitely.
So you said you worked at Today, Reed, and we talk with Today a lot. Why don't you kind of just let us know about Today a bit, because we're very partnered with Today here at Analytic Endeavors, so we're good friends.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to you coming here in a couple of weeks as well, training as well in Denmark as well. But yeah, Today, we are 3,000 employees in the Nordics, doing everything that rhymes with PC computer, but more fun aside with websites, ERP systems, data and AI, user adoption and rolling out Copilot and much more. But I'm in the data and AI department and in the academy department within that. So doing training full-time, externally and internally, everything that rhymes with Power BI, Power Query, and Tableau Editor.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, as you mentioned, myself and Reed here at Analytic Endeavors, we're going to head over for July 16th and 17th to do a training with you guys. We're also speaking at a Denmark user group, so we're excited to come over. We love Denmark, and there's always a lot of Power BI and data stuff going on there, so we're excited to get back over.
Definitely. Looking forward to that as well.
Awesome. I think this would be good if you want to sort of maybe start introducing the topic and let us know what we're going to be talking about today, because I think it's going to be a very interesting one.
Definitely. I have prepared a few slides and also a lot of live demos here as well. So we have the slides Perfect. So yeah, a lot to talk of Denmark. So where is Denmark? Not everyone maybe knows that. So of course I embedded a Power BI report into my PowerPoint presentation, and not just a flat map, but more like a shape map. So let's dive into, here is Europe, and here is small Denmark. And I actually was born and raised up in the small island to the right in the blue. That is Bornholm. That is the Sunshine Islands. That is something unique in Denmark as well.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, from Bornholm there, and I already introduced myself, but really passionate about guiding self-service Power BI developers to understand more enterprise concepts, but in a very practical way. So that's also the topic that we're going to deep dive into today with composite models. So first, I would like to introduce a bit with what are we doing today with normally live connection, but also some of the pain points that the self-service developer would experience and why they could consider this the composite model. And then also we'll look on some live demos, how can we then enrich our semantic model and the reports with this composite model as well. But then we're also going to move to some pitfalls, especially when using calculation groups. There will also be something about security, performance, scalability, but specifically also for calculation group, a feature I really care about. And if you're really into this on, okay, you have showed me enough that I need to disable this. So I'm going to show you that as well, how you can disable all this, because of course, everything is enabled as default.
It's always an important one to have in there, I think. So I'm glad you included
Exactly.
it.
I know my audience. And then I have a long list of considerations, and it depends, and a lot of resources. I'm no expert in deep dive in composite models and the performance. I will point to some Italians and other much more experts on that, but I'll more into what are the practical implications on this for the Power BI self-service developer. Yeah. So I don't know if there are thumbs up or anything, but if there are any in the chat or comments, let me know if you have worked or explored these composite models with direct query to Power BI semantic models, because that's definitely something that we're gonna deep dive into. And if you're confused about the composite models, which one I do mean, well, I have an overview slide in a few minutes as well. But one thing to be very important about, and I'm a consultant. I've been that for the past 10 years, and the number of times I have said that it depends. Yeah, and that is also one size fits all is really difficult. And here we actually have from the Microsoft's implementation user scenarios diagrams that Kurt Buehler also have updated a bit as well. We actually have 16 different usage scenarios as well. So it's definitely really important to know what kind of company and maturity levels are you, and which usage scenario are you working with. And maybe a company can have different ones as well. So I'm going to take some of them out that we're going to focus on for the topic here as well. But really a good resource here to look here on as well. So the scenario that I'm going to bring into this session is we have an enterprise team that are doing ingest, transform, and load and semantic model with more enterprise, IT professional tools, data factory, notebooks, lakehouse. Could be Databricks, it could be Fabric, and using Tableau Editor with the XML endpoint to create fast, great semantic models. And then they push out the semantic model to the business for self-service to create their own Power BI reports or even Excel in a live connection. So that is the scenario to begin with. And I do love live connection. I need to say that. And I would like to do a lot to strive for a live connection, to have few validated semantic models where we can have many reports or even Excel or paginated reports or anything else, more Fabric artifacts that actually can connect to this semantic model. But as a report developer, well, I have so many things I can do in Power BI Desktop, but it's all grayed out because I'm doing a live connection. But let's head into a small demo on what is actually feasible at this moment, and a small feature I really recommend that every semantic model would have. So right now I'm in Power BI Desktop. We have some report pages here. And the model view we have here is a simple fact table of sales, where we have some dimension tables in the top, and we have some measure group tables, calculation groups, and a model documentation table here as well. Here I'm in live connection. I can see that in the bottom right corner, and I would actually like to create a new measure that the semantic model developer didn't include. So normally I would go to my global measures. That could be then a display folder with my local measures, because as a report developer in a live connection, you can create report level measures, which is really nice. Whether it's a separate measure group or it's a display folder, it's up to you. I have seen different ways where you have test or local in front of every measure and you forget that it should be migrated back or deleted, many things. But we can easily create a measure here. Let's say we would like to include a new quantity year-to-date measure. And we can, of course, do this in the easy way here. So now we have added this report level measures, and we can include that here in the report. And that is, for some, a high degree of self-service. Let's see if it works. Clicking on May, yeah, we have different numbers there as well. Often when you then are doing this live connection, many would be happy about this. You are not able to actually see the DAX expression behind the measures. Fortunately, there is a script in, for example, Table Editor, where you can just have the DAX expression as a description field. I think many know this, where you can then, let me find this, hover over this one to see now in the description, it is a sum of sales quantity and so forth. So that is really something that are relevant for the report developer. But just a small trick is I have included this model documentation table, or that was the Semantic Model Developer, using this new info.view DAX function, which is really awesome. I created like a union between column, measures, relationship, and tables. And now the semantic model always have this table where I can then, as a report developer in a live connection, see, okay, I have these columns, or I have these measures, or relationships, or tables, and I have everything there with the expression and description. So I actually don't need to have the expression script to description now that I have these info.view functions. And I can even search here for, let's say, year-to-date, and then see, okay, did I actually make the same type of calculation in the revenue act year-to-date in the new measure I did in the quantity year-to-date? So I think that is really neat. I think that should be relevant for many more technical report developers. Have you worked with the info.view DAX function, Steve?
I was just going to say one of my favorite new functions they've had. If anyone's not used them, definitely just check them out. You can see here the info.view, amazing for documentation, right? And
Yes,
without needing to write scripts to get this, just basically returns what you see here on the screen. So one of my favorites, really useful to get quick information.
And the great thing about this is it is something that you can just have a script for, and it will be applied for every semantic model. So not that company specific, data specific, it is so generic and no kind of input needed. So that's really awesome. But again, live connection for some would be really a high degree of self-service, but I quickly would like to add my own tables or columns or my own Excel data, or a feature I also really do love is field parameters, which I'm not able to play with right now. I need to go through the enterprise then. Could you please add this field parameters? I would like to remove some of my bookmarks, add some more dynamic slicers for my end users. If they don't see the light of this, or maybe it's only you that would like this, and many are connecting to the semantic model, why should I have that included in the semantic model? So here we then have, okay, maybe there's more. And before I go into some rabbit holes here, this is still applied also if you are not following fully. Roche's maximum data transformation. Data should be transformed as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary. Still applies. So just remember that, and I will remind you of that again at the end. But the holy grail for self-service BI, and it's not just any who just said that, and it's been a while. Public preview in December 2020, and I think very long time in preview, general available in April 2023. And that is the composite models that we will dive into. And the composite model, or you can also say mixed storage mode, we have the import, we're using the Vertipack engine, which would be the fastest in most or almost every time. Then you have direct query to a relational database, for example, SQL. And then you have now this new direct query on Power BI Semantic Model, which is the new one. So this is then one of the composite models, and also the one that we're going to focus on this session with extending an enterprise model. But I have a few others, if you're a bit confused on the composite model side. There is one from Bernard Aguelo-Resello. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. But he has a great article on I want it all in one-page dashboard, not the dashboard like the artifact that you can create in the service, which is the UX, UI, and features. Please don't do that. But you can have now direct query on multiple Power BI semantic models to only focus on the main KPI to have like a management overview or something like that. We actually also, yeah, and is that you, Fabric Metric Set, is what I'm thinking about. We also have near live or historic analysis, direct query to a database, SQL database, and then import. We also have hybrid tables. So within a table, it can be import, incremental refresh, and direct query. And now we just got a new one here last month with direct lake to the one lake plus import. That is not per se like a new semantic model that you will get with the two above, but it will be different storage mode within the same semantic model. So
very cool update, I think, that one. Yeah, it was a very requested feature, I know, and a lot of people are happy with that direct lake and import. So very, very cool to see that.
Definitely, all that with the fallback behavior to direct query using views, and could you add calculated columns, calculation groups, all that. That's yeah, but quite new, this one, and of course Fabric. So we're going to dive into the extending an enterprise model. So the scenario we saw before, where the enterprise team were delivering all the ingest, transform, load, and semantic model, and the business would do the visualization, we now have this user scenario on customizable managed self-service BI. That is the one that's called on Microsoft Docs. Discipline at the core and flexibility at the edge. So of course, we're going to see our query, the self-service ETL tool, so they can bring in their own Excel or add new features in their own semantic model, but still have a direct query to the enterprise model, and then create the reports based on the enterprise model data and their own data as well. And that is really something cool. And I'm going to show you a lot of live demos and tricks in here, but there will also be some confusing and who owns what. And yeah, let's just say that could be some confusing points as well. More on that later. So that was it. Let's go into demo as well and create a composite model. So in order to get started, of course, there are multiple ways of getting to that result. Inside modeling, we could go to make changes to this model, or we could say here the green hyperlink, make changes to this model. Let's do so. Then there will be a pop-up, which no one really reads or understand. We'll just add a local model, fine. Whatever makes me enable these features. And then we just wait. And then there is something really cool. So now we are connecting to a data like it was a database. It's also here we can see the perspectives, something you would use in Temple View or tabulator to create these perspectives. So we can actually have a subset of these tables if that would be relevant. But I would
I'm just going to give a shout out here to perspectives. In fact, on our channel, both myself and Reed have made videos about perspectives. Really cool underutilized feature, mainly because you can't natively add them for some reason, but you can natively use them. So definitely a reason to have Tabular Editor. Probably the easiest, and you can have Tabular Editor 2 for free, right? But I would really just want to shout out to perspectives here and composite models with them.
Yeah, and also it would be an easy way. I think you had a video where you showed how to do it in Excel, but it's actually quite difficult to connect to a perspective, like in a live connection to Power BI. So
we have a video on that too, but yeah, it's much easier in the composite model, I'll say.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'll just include everything here, and also if the Enterprise Semantic Model we're adding new tables, I will then also have these included here as well. So I'll click Submit. And now the connected live to the Power BI Semantic Model, and then the name, and then the workspace name. That will then be, now we can see the storage mode, and then it says direct query. All right. And that's also because now we are in a different kind of state that you actually have a direct query, but we actually didn't include anything in the Vertipack engine, for example, like that. But let's add something I'm really passionate about is the field parameters, and now this is enabled. So now we can add this field parameters, and I will have just a simple one where we'll have the switch between, let's say, quantity and revenue. And now we have created this in DAX. We have this slicer, we have this parameter measure where you can use this question mark, which is the dynamic part. And we can then include that as part of the visual. And I'll then have this quantity selected, not in the legends. Thank you. And now we can switch between quantity and revenue. Of course, very, very simple. I would not use time to shine this thing up, but now we have field parameters there and can really be something really cool for the reports. And in the bottom right corner, we now see not storage mode direct query, but now it is mixed. Because now we have something from the remote or the enterprise model and something that is done locally here in this semantic model. And now we have all our tabs over here to the left, where I have the table view. And in the table view, I'm now able to see the field parameter. And I can see all the other tables. If I go to model documentation, however, this table cannot be shown because it is not in input mode, like in every other direct query. So now we have this composite model where we are mixing these storage modes. All right. Let's do something more. So that is some of the two main questions I get from course participants. How can I add field parameters and how can I add my own Excel data? Well, normally we would not use the Excel workbook. We should use the web connector. I have a post about that, but let's just, to make it easy, use this Excel workbook if you would like to refresh your data. So I have this wonderful sales budget. And of course, we're going to use Power Query to make some transformation steps here. And I wish that the green button would not be load, but transform data when you're connecting to unstructured sources like Excel. And we should then have Power Query opened up. And normally when you have everything in import, you would see all the tables, but now we only see the budget here because that's the only one that is in import. I would like to then do some quick transformations here. An issue still in 2025 is the date format, number formats. So my computer is set up to English, but this Excel workbook is set to Danish. It's gonna make some trouble. So I'm asking, please, Power Query, would you please see this as Danish? And then it works. And then we, of course, in Excel have too many columns. We would like to unpivot these columns. So we have here country, and now we have all our column headers now into one column that is product name, and then we have our budgets. Perfect. So now I'll close and apply, and now we'll have that local budgets into our composite model. All right. Now we have our budgets over here, 4 columns. And the first thing I would always go and check is what are the relationships when I added a new table. So now I go into the model view, and I'm now able to see my tables here. And there's actually something about the colors here as well. We can see all the blue shaped tables here is coming from the Enterprise model. So I'm hovering over here. We can also see the server and database and data source type. And hovering over here, we have the storage mode, which is in import. Well, I would like to then create some relationships between these. And I will come back to these relationships a bit later here as well. But to start with, for many business users, let's just see if it works, right? And then we can care about optimization afterwards. So now we have a one-to-many relationships, but you can already see there is some weak relationships here. And then I would like to have my product name as part of the relationship here as well. And then I would like to hide all columns here because I actually have my measure group here. And I would like to, in my local measures, add a new measure that will take the sum of that budget revenue. So this is my budget, let's call it local. And this is my sum of my budgets.
And I want to pull out here a very good practice that you did, hiding all the columns in your fact table and writing measures. One of my key points, I think. So just wanted to point out that really good practice in case people missed it there. So we don't want people to be playing with the fact tables themselves, just the measures.
Exactly. And now that I've created the relationships, I would like to see my revenue from my enterprise model, and I've created relations to my calendar table. I can now include my budget into here, and I can compare these. And that will really solve many pains from a business point of view. Many companies, many departments, many analytical have their own local mapping on even profit and loss statement sometimes, and would like to see their own view or their own mapping or budgets. And you can do that here in the composite model, but more on that later as well with the ownership of who owns what and who will support what as well. But this really enhances the self-service for the more advanced report developers.
Awesome.
Great. So let's come into some more, I would say, fun and confusing stuff. And just a disclaimer, everything I'm going to show from now on, maybe you shouldn't do it, but now you just know that it's actually feasible. And then
I always say
that is,
yeah, when you're playing and when you're learning, it's a good time to ignore best practice and go and push it right as far as you can. When you go to the enterprise reports, maybe you think about it, but I love these ones, and I'm sure the audience will too, and I feel like you do as well. Just see what we can do.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So one thing that can be quite annoying. The naming convention. You are not happy with the naming convention that the semantic model developer created. Maybe they have a script, or maybe it's camel case, uppercase, title case, whatever. You're not happy about it. You need something else. Let's say this revenue acts, that is a measure coming from my enterprise model. I hate that it's called acts. I'm thinking, should I act upon it? No, it's actually just abbreviation for actuals. But my end users doesn't know that. So I could then, and that is something I could do, go that, rename that per visual. I'm going to use this measure because I'm not able to rename the measure. Or am I? Because normally I would rename for this visual, but I'm using this revenue act measure across many report pages. So let's see if we can just rename it. So we have our measure over here. That is our revenue act. And normally, if it's a local measure, like here, I can see the tab, I can define it. But see here in the revenue act, which is, I'm not able to see this. I can just double click and let rename an enterprise measure into my own logic or own naming. And then it's just updating here. And now there most likely will be some confusing on where did this measure come from? And how is the engine actually handling all this? We'll see that a bit later on when we're opening up for the DAX queries and performance analyzer. But this is actually something you could do. Something else is I have this table here, or this column chart, and it is revenue by year, month, and day. And my semantic model developer didn't format the dates as expected, or forgot to include that I would like to have a column with just the number in the day of the month, just 1 or 2 or 3 or 30. So it's difficult to see here in the column chart. So I would expect I could then go to my calendar, and I'm not able to really, well, I could try to change the format, but what I can actually do instead, which is a bit more fun, and normally I would go to table view to then create my calculated columns or anything, the view I'm gonna add. But now I'll go to table view and go to my calendar. Well, I'm not seeing the table, but I can still add a new column. So let's do that. Let's call this day, and then the day, and then the calendar dates. And this is added. I have now the calculated column day on a calendar table that is not in import mode. Let's see if I can use it. So instead of using this date, I will include my day. And now I have what I need here in my report. So we can add calculated columns here. Yeah, you're laughing as well.
You've got to test your DAX skills there to be able to write without being able to see your table.
Yeah, that's something. That's something, truly. All right. Something else as well. Actually, the enterprise model actually have some row level security, but this also applies to if you're doing object level security. Also a thing that you can only, well, Power BI Desktop respects it, but you can only create it like in Tabular Editor, or you can also add it with a new template view here as well. But just to go to the row level security, well, that is a modeling feature here. We have the manage roles and view as. And there is actually 2 roles on this semantic model. But when I click view as, I'm not able to see it. And if I go into my manage roles, I'm not able to see it either. And let's see what I can add a new role into. And that is only on the 2 tables that is in import mode. So really the key thing is to stress that if you have row level security or object level security in your enterprise model, be so careful about enabling composite models, because the rules that you have applied on your enterprise models will not be applied on to these local budgets or parameter tables here as well. Vice versa, something you would select on roles here would not propagate to the enterprise tables here as well. So that is something you really should be careful about.
And then obviously on that point, I think the permissions you'll need in order to set up the composite model.
Yeah, there's something more into that as well, with all the build access and underlying, and also there's something special. Well, object level security is pretty cool, but can be quite confusing as well, and also depending on what is the owner's access when that was created based on what you then can have access to or whatever. Just, I'm not an expert here, but just stress that if you have something about role level security or object level security, really validate this. And you have this, like you would, like besides role level security, object level security is in itself just in one semantic model complex or something that could be quite difficult. Now it's just get even more complex here as well. Then we also have Vertipack Analyzer, and Vertipack Analyzer can be seen different places, but I do have a love for Tableau Editor, and it is my colleague Daniel Ottiker who created this. So of course we have a license to the Tableau Editor 3. Let's open that up. Because inside Tableau Editor 3, Vertipack Analyzer is actually embedded or included into the tool, but you can have a Vertipack Analyzer in another setting there as well. So we have now connected to the semantic model as an external tool, including here in Tableau Editor. Also, some fun stuff is when you're then opening up the global measures and the model measures, it is something called, you are not able to see the expression. It's just like external measure, then the name, and then the data type, and then the directory to AS, analysis services, and then the mastering composite model, where it's only the local measures we're actually able to see here with the quantity year to date. We have here the Vertipack Analyzer, and again, several ways of getting this analysis, but Vertipack is like the import engine here. And I would then say collect stats, and it's then collecting these stats from my semantic model. And it looks, wow, I have a really, really small model, only a few kilobytes here. And I have a lot of tables and columns. But when I go into the tables here as well, I can see all the tables. Well, something we should really look for is the cardinality. And the cardinality in this instance for the tables is the number of rows. And I know I have rows on my sales table, but it is set to 0. So it's not able to collect stats from the tables that are in the remote model in the directory. It's only able to collect stats on the local. So that is something we should be careful about, because there's something with the relationships as well, where it will check for referential integrity, where, for example, you could have a registration on a new product on your fact table, but it's not mapped on your product dimension. Then Power BI will automatically try to include like a blank row, which you often see in a slicer in a Power BI report. Why do I have this blank option in my slicer? That is because most likely you haven't updated your master data or your dimension. And with the cardinality and relationships and all this, that is also something that Power BI are using when we are looking on the relationships. So how can it then assume referential integrity if it's not able to collect information on the cardinality on the tables to try to connect to, whether it's one or many? So that is also why we're seeing this. You would normally see this in a many-to-many relationships, but you also see this in tables with different storage modes, like directory to import or directory to analysis services, semantic model, and import, where you have this break in the chain. So this is like a weak relationships or limited relationship, where it's not able to have that assumed referential integrity. So instead of doing like an inner join, it's doing like a full outer join, something like that, which will try to assist, but performance-wise, it will not be that optimal. So there are some normal metadata that we're not able to get when we're using this composite model. All right. There were some few things here. I'll just hop back to the slides because I would like to have something on the remote and local, and also a bit on the calculation group here as well. So there are different ways of trying to have the concept of the wholesale or retail, or it could be local or enterprise or self-service. You can also call it different islands when you have different storage mode. But again, the wholesale or remote is, yeah, you could say enterprise team, and then the retail local is the tables that we include. And we saw it here already, or the blue was the remote, and the blank one or the whites is my local heroes. And that is very relevant when we go into calculation group here in a minute. And calculation groups, yeah, I love calculation groups. It just adds so many cool options, so many cool filters, or just adds user experience in a different way. So many cool stuff. And of course, I have some articles around that for some scripts, for example, making date periods a bit easier instead of the default date slicers. Relative date slicer, well, you could create calculation groups like this, or time intelligence, or unit conversion, all cool stuff. That is all with the selected measure. So let's see how we can use calculation group then in our composite models. And are there any implications of this? Let's dive in. So in my calculation group here, we actually have two calculation groups, time intelligence with daily, multi-day, quarter-to-date, year-to-date, like a time intelligence. And then we have a unit conversion where you like to see your figures in current, or in thousands, or in millions. So I could then add my budget local to this. And there is some formatting. Let's just fix that. It's horrible to look on. So 1,000 separation, and let's just take 0 decimal points. Perfect. And then I would like to add a difference between these two. So revenue versus budget diff, and then my revenue, not act, but now revenue actuals, because that's the one I renamed. And then budget local. And then 1,000 separation there. So let's include that here as well. So let's imagine that we have created reports and used this live connection. It's only recently that we got the fuss about this composite model, and now we added this budget, and we expect that the calculation group will work. And now it looks fine, and the numbers are correct. But let's say I would like to view my data in thousands. So if I click here on the calculation group, notice that it's only some that is actually changing. And I can see it here in the millions here as well. Well, it's not everything that actually is being applied here. So it looks like it's only applying for the remote model measures and not for the local ones. And I can also see it here in the year-to-date, where I expect something to accumulate during the months. It's just the same default months. So nothing is being applied here. So using calculation groups, and the calculation group that is coming or defined in the enterprise model, combining with local measures, it's not going to work. Or if it's going to work, it's with unexpected results. I think that is the phrase in the documentation. But again, I really do love calculation group. So could there be a workaround? Yeah, a bit. So let's open Tableau Editor, and I will open up a DAX script where I have my unit conversion calculation group, and I will just call this calculation group figures in local, where I have the 3 calculation items. Let's click apply. Let's click save model. And it should give me a refresh. Yeah, now comes refresh now. So it needs to be calculated. So I have now my calculation group, and already now the detailed oriented person who likes icons and understand all the different icons that Microsoft comes up with. We have this icon for calculation groups, but my calculation group from my model is actually, when it was live connected, we actually had that icon for my figures in and my time intelligence, but that is not there now. So it looks promising. So let me add this figures in local and in a slicer. That should be single select. And now I select current. And if I then select in millions and wait, we'll see now everything is being applied. Even though there are some precedents with this one, this was created earlier based on this one, because now we have in million, this is a current, it's not talking to each other. You could do that small hack of either removing for the model or sync these two slicers so it's following together. But it looks from my test and demos that when we create calculation groups in the local setting, it can actually be applied both for the local but also the remote measures. But again, maybe there will be some complications I'm not aware of, but in the demos and tests I have done, it works. So you could do that for the time intelligence as well, and something like that. And maybe you could then create a perspective to actually create a subset of all the tables in the enterprise models to exclude the calculation groups when you're doing composite models, if you would like to avoid the confusing part of this. But again, that requires that a script or maybe enterprise model that remembers that, or you need to train and upskill your report developers to know everything about that in the calculation group. So yeah, really be careful about this one as well. All right. So more into what is actually happening and why didn't it work before? And this is the area where I also have a video pointing to Alberto Ferrari. He just said it's an introduction to composite models. Of course he does, but that's only 1 hour. But that's much more into what I'm going to go into just briefly now. I'm going to open up the performance analyzer and start recording. And let's just look on what's happening with this one, because it's actually just the model measures. And let's just turn this on to currents and then analyze again. And then we have this one, and then we have copy query. And then I will open up another external tool. All those wonderful external tools. DAX Studio is free. So here we can then copy paste that DAX query into here. And I would say already now, well, I do love DAX in a way that can solve business problems and do something cool with data analysis. But performance analyzer and looking on all those variables that is being generated to render the visuals and number, it's a different kind of DAX. And let me just warn you that it will be different now with the composite models here as well. So as I'm copy pasting in, it also says multiple query types are detected because they're both DAX, but also direct query. So if I include here as well, I'm now able to see I have something in the DAX query and something in the direct query. And normally if everything was in import, that was just being handled in the DAX query. But now we also have this direct query, which is actually the direct query that it needs to take and send to the remote model in order to render the visuals there, because there could be some filters applied. We can see here ASDQ is analysis services direct query, and then that's all those DS filter table and so much. Treat as, keep filters, and much more there. So this just got a bit more complicated looking on multiple query types here as well. And if I go into this one and analyze this one, And I also just have this calculation group applied. And let me take another filter on retail, for example, analyze this visual. We'll get this query. And I will copy paste that in. And now we have a few more lines of code. We have 654 lines here in DAX query. And there are DAX functions I've never heard about. Group, cross apply table, always apply, all selected remove, filter cluster. Good luck on trying to get that. Even Alberto Bodori, not to quote a session that, well, I am quoting him from a session he did 1.5 years ago. Most likely he have seen more into it, but this is very complex engine. And to understand fully what this does is really difficult, but there is magic happening. But again, to understand it fully in depth, that is really difficult. So will this impact performance as well? Well, I think you guessed right. Yeah, most likely, right? Compared to if you could have everything in a DAX query. So, and that was actually, to be honest, quite a simple matrix. But okay, I did some filterings, but nothing I wouldn't expect would be 600 lines of DAX. And that would also be there in some aliases on the renames of my measures. So you can actually know that I renamed this model measure, but in the remote model, it's named something else. So there could be something there that it needs to send information because it's not there in the remote in order to communicate together. And that's actually the thing here when you sometimes see these potential security risk window that you also just click OK to. And there in the session on Alberto Bodori, he actually make that some DAX filters, a bit advanced there, I would say, but it's actually the end result. It includes the full customer table inside the directory DAX. So you can see all the customer names, gender, IDs, cities they live in the directory or the query itself. And if you have the competency or access as an admin to monitor the logs, you can actually see these confidential information. So in this way, that could be something you would like to share. Yeah,
that's an important security point there, and these are the things that can typically trip people up when they're using those. So I think that's a very important point to review.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and this was also just a consideration whether I do love perspectives, and you could try to exclude the calculation groups. But again, you need to have like a process set up in order to know if you would like to exclude calculation groups, if it's you need to create a composite models. So, and I know there is this Dutch data dude that says often, have you tried visual calcs? Which is a new feature. I haven't tested it myself, but I saw this YouTube video and someone was saying that they discovered some benefits on using the visual calcs because it's only on the data on the visual. And instead of then sending a lot of data back and forth between these two engines, maybe there could actually be a benefit in performance-wise when doing the visual calcs. For example, with the revenue minus the budgets, to only have that part of the visual. I haven't tested that, but I hope that others could test that when using composite model. But even using that visual calcs will also generate a lot of DAX queries inside DAX Studio there as well. All right. You can actually, like in the movie Inception, have a dream and a dream and a dream. But then I would say it will be a nightmare because you can create a composite model connected to a composite model to a composite models up to 3 levels. I don't know why you would do more than 1 and more than 3 isn't supported. So just to say that it could be even wilder than this, but let's just focus on making 1 composite model and not level 2 or level 3.
I think looking at the looking at the DAX statements from just one, I could imagine if you got to 3, it's gonna be very complicated. So yeah,
exactly. And also then who owns the data? Because when you now have the enterprise data, where you have all the different IT professional tools with Tableau Editor, Azure Data Factory that have pipelines and orchestrated and scheduled refreshes, but when do my Excel data then refresh? And can I refresh it when I did that local path with the Excel connector and need a gateway and all about that, and who supports what when it fails? Because this will create a separate semantic model that you need to schedule refresh on. But if it fails, who does what? And you have an agreed data contract, like that the enterprise team doesn't just change the table names or column names that you have included in your composite models, or even the other way around. Would the enterprise models even accept integrating this Excel file into an enterprise setup and try to then have that part of an enterprise setup? And that is really something. So the business, again, I would like to solve my business problems today, where IT enterprise is more like do the right way with terms of performance, governance, licensing, and all that. So there's always some battle between those. But what I would often see is then, well, if I'm not able to do that, I will just export this enterprise data to Excel and do a lot of VLOOKUPs or XLOOKUPs and do my own thing, where if we are restricting them from this composite model feature, the business will always find a way out. But doing this composite model thing, you can actually more monitor and audit that they are using and sending DAX queries to your remote model instead of just disconnecting everything when they say manual export to Excel. But with that said, if you have waited for this the entire session, thanks for waiting. But if you are from IT, how can I disable this? There are two ways of doing that. You can do it on the individual model. So if you have created an enterprise semantic model inside Power BI Desktop before publishing, there is this for the current file that you can discourage direct query connections. And of course, this is enabled by default. So you need to actively discourage this. You could also do it from a tenant point of view in the admin portal, where you can just enable it or disable it for the entire tenant. Most likely, you could also add some trusted security groups that, okay, we would like to only have these to do this. So here's the way on how to disable that. And if you're really, really passionate about of this composite models, you can even, this was internally, you can actually also do it externally. I don't know. Well, there are most likely use cases and more with sustainability and use data sharing that, but that's like sharing a composite model with build access in some way to external partners outside your tenants. These are disabled by default, but you can actually enable this and share models outside to external partners as well. Just a small shout out to Jon Verge here who wrote about this. There's an article you can see there for more details. All right. I have a lot of summary of considerations for these composite models. I will not go through everything, so this is just you'll get the slides, and I have written a LinkedIn article that will come up tomorrow where you can see more details. But the first thing, choose the right storage mode and for your need, and whenever possible, add to existing shared model and create live connection, like the Roche's maximum of data transformation. That would be the key thing. And also, composite models are not for the enterprise team. You have the capability to shift left and do everything at the back end. Doing this composite models from a standpoint type of view, well, how to mix and match different semantic models into one? Well, that can be sometimes a pain for the enterprise team, but composite models is not that thing for you. It is something for more the self-service perspectives. So it is more for the business self-service users, and I will just quickly go through all here because there are a lot of things to consider based on ownership, performance, also with the calculation groups aspects. Also, if you are importing a really big dimension or fact table as well into the composite models, well, there's something, a recommendation, it should be less than 10,000 unique values in order to have a good performance on that. So many things there that you need to be take into consideration. But Roach maximum of data transformation, and as many times as possible, strive for one semantic model, shared semantic model with live connection. But again, depending on the usage scenario, depending on your context, depending on how filled the backlog is for the enterprise team and the business needs answers today, and you can only deliver in a sprint months from now, well, you need to find ways. Composite models is a really cool way of solving some companies' needs, but you need to have some considerations for this. And here is credit and resources to follow up on. Everything I have learned is from this, but also my own experience and a lot of demos and something here as well. All right, that was the end of my slides and demos.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, really interesting. Thanks for teaching us all, and I think a lot of interesting points and a lot of things you've got to be careful of as well, which is always true when you're doing this sort of stuff. I think for me, one question I had is do you have any tips and hints for anyone building a semantic model that you know is going to be used in composite models? Because I think, to be honest, this now and now that we're getting semantic models used in things like composite models, used in more, and Fabric's really opening this up, I think it's more important than ever to have really well designed and good models.
Well, yeah, I would say not just for the composite model, but the semantic model is really like the center of everything, I would say. So to have a consistent naming convention, also how you, the small things on hiding all the columns or adding description fields also to tables and columns and measures, but also actually really making sure on documentation. So also the automate updated model documentation with the info.view functions, because everything will now be in that one lake catalog with the semantic models, where you can now browse and discover other semantic models. And those semantic models will most likely, and is beginning already now, that you can train your AI or would like to enrich your semantic model, because you would like to have your AI and Copilot to actually deliver some reports or results or some answers from that semantic model. So yeah, more than ever, we need to be consistent in the way we develop semantic models across the organization, across developers. And I am a bit biased, I know, but I have so many scripts I can use in Tablet Editor, and it will be the same consistent way I do with the semantic models, but I can easily share that across all the other model developers as well. So we have a consistent look and feel and documentation that will really help when we are using composite models from different departments or whatever. So really stress to have something consistent and a governance and process on developing semantic models, whether that is Tablet Editor or other cool stuff.
Couldn't agree more on the consistency. And to the point, we actually use what we call semantic model rules, and that whenever we want to certify, they have to follow standard, again, consistency. Because I think consistency, completely agree with you here. I want to know as a developer looking at one model and understand it. And if it's different, everyone's doing it differently, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, the best practice analyzer with the rules, I think it's 71 rules plus Michael Kowalski have created. So again, to validate violations or anything on your semantic models, so many cool stuff there. That's true.
And then we do have a quick question here from Benjamin.
Yeah.
So he said he only joined halfway through, but he's asking if the source semantic model changes, is it easy to see the changes in the composite model?
So like if there are new table or columns added to that enterprise, well, if that's it, it will just be included, and there's actually no way of like if you have been doing a direct lake semantic model in Fabric, you should remember to update the schema, something to include new things. Well, you'll just have everything there. So I would say not an easy way to see the changes. Yeah.
So probably to emphasize your point, you were just talking about the documentation and making sure everything's there, and part of the documentation could be things done in a year, right, and updated stuff.
Small steps like communication on that is just so difficult as well between those, and how often and where and when and do people read it. Yeah, so yeah, gonna be some challenges there.
Awesome. Well, I think that was excellent. Yeah, really love that. I think for me, self-service BI and this, as I say, as you said, the semantic model there is really the center of everything around a whole Power BI Fabric solution. So thank you for that. Some great tips and tricks, and it was really great to have you on.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, awesome. And unfortunately, I won't see you in Denmark, but luckily you will be at SQL Bits, so we'll get to hang out in a couple of weeks over at SQL Bits. And if anyone on the stream's coming to SQL Bits or in Denmark, definitely come and say hi.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was great, and we will speak soon. And thanks to everyone for joining and staying on and watching this great presentation.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Bye.